At 28, Jason believed he was doing everything right. He had a stable job, he had savings, and he had $42,000 ready for a down payment. Everyone around him told him the same thing. Renting was wasting money. Buying a home was building wealth, and real adults owned property. So Jason bought a $420,000 house in a suburb outside Denver. Not because he ran the numbers, but because the story sounded responsible. And in America, responsible stories are easier to believe than uncomfortable math. Here's what the house actually cost him each month. His mortgage payment was $2,470. Property taxes added another $420. Insurance cost $180. And the homeowners association charged $215. In total, Jason was paying $3,285 every month. Before buying the house, he rented a nicer apartment that was closer to work. His rent was only $1,900 per month. Buying the house increased his housing cost by $1,385 every single month. But Jason did not feel poorer. He felt proud, because now his money was not being wasted on rent. It was invested in his future. Or at least, that is what he believed. 4 years later, the numbers told a different story. Jason had spent about $157,000 just to live in that house. The housing market had cooled. His home was now worth about $445,000. His remaining mortgage balance was $352,000. That meant his home equity was about $93,000. On paper, that looked like progress, but something was missing, because Jason never compared his results to the alternative. Now imagine Jason never bought the house. Instead, he kept renting for $1,900 per month. He invested the extra $1,385 each month. And he invested his $42,000 down payment in an index fund. At an average return of 8%, his monthly investments would grow to about $81,000. His original $42,000 would grow to about $57,000. That would give him a total liquid net worth of about $138,000. Jason's actual home equity was only $93,000. Same age, same income. Two different choices. One choice left him $45,000 poorer, and his money was now locked inside a house. Jason did not lose money. He paid for something. He paid for the feeling of being responsible. He paid for the status of homeownership. He paid for the story that buying a house automatically builds wealth. What he did not pay for was the math, because math does not care about social pressure. Math only cares about results. And the numbers quietly showed him the truth. Buying at 28 did not build his wealth, it delayed it. So here's the real question, not, should I buy or rent? But, what is the real price of ownership in my market? Because every house has two prices, the price on the listing and the price your future net worth pays. Most people only look at the first one. For most people, the rent versus buy debate feels simple. Renting is seen as wasting money. Buying a home is seen as building wealth. This idea is repeated by parents, coworkers, real estate agents, and social media. After a while, it feels like common sense. But the problem is that common sense is not the same thing as financial reality. When you own a home, you are still throwing money away. It just does not look like rent. Instead, the money disappears through property taxes, maintenance, interest, and opportunity cost. These costs do not build equity. They do not grow your net worth. They simply pay for the privilege of living in the house. This is where the 5% rule comes in. The rule estimates the true annual cost of owning a home. On average, about 1% of the home's value goes to property taxes. About 1% goes to maintenance and repairs, and about 3% goes to the cost of capital. The cost of capital includes mortgage interest and the investment returns you give up by tying your money into the house. Together, these costs add up to about 5% per year. That 5% is not an investment. It is the price of occupancy. Here is how the rule works. Take a home that costs $500,000. 5% of that is $25,000 per year. That is about $2,083 per month. If you can rent a similar home for less than that amount, Renting is financially cheaper than owning. No emotions, no opinions, just math. Now let's look at real cities. In San Francisco, the median home price is about $1.2 million. 5% of that is $60,000 per year or $5,000 per month. But the median rent for a similar property is closer to $3,200. That means renting saves about $1,800 every month. In Austin, Texas, the median home price is around $550,000. 5% of that is about $27,500 per year. That comes out to about $2,290 per month. Median rent is around $2,100. Renting is still cheaper. In Cleveland, Ohio, the median home price is around $230,000. 5% of that is about $11,500 per year, or $958 per month. Median rent is closer to $1,200. In that market, buying may actually make financial sense. The pattern is clear. In expensive cities, especially on the coasts and in fast-growing metro areas, renting is often cheaper than buying. People are not building wealth. They are paying a premium for ownership. And then they justify it with the idea that renting is throwing money away. But renting is not throwing money away. Renting is paying for housing. Owning is also paying for housing. The difference is how the costs are hidden. When you rent, the cost is simple and visible. When you own, the cost is spread across many categories that feel less painful. But the money still leaves your account. The 5% rule does not tell you what to do. It simply tells you the truth about the trade-off. It shows you the real price of ownership in your market. And once you see that price clearly, the decision becomes much easier to evaluate. At this point, many people have the same response. They say, even if owning is expensive now, the house will go up in value. It sounds reasonable, it sounds historical, and it sounds comforting. But comfort is not the same as accuracy. Over the long term, housing does not grow the way most people think it does. According to research from Nobel Prize-winning economist Robert Shiller, the real return on housing, after inflation, is about 1% per year. Not 8% like stocks, not 5% like bonds. Just 1%. That means homes mostly keep up with inflation and add a small amount on top. Let's look at what that actually means. Imagine you buy a $500,000 home today. After 30 years in real purchasing power, it might be worth about $675,000. That is a gain of about $175,000. Now compare that to investing the same $500,000 in a stock market index fund with a 7% real return. After 30 years, that money would grow to about $3.8 million. Same money, different place, very different result. So why do people think housing returns are much higher? Because they remember the headline numbers, not the real numbers. They remember that their parents bought a house for $60,000 and sold it for $400,000. They forget about decades of inflation, maintenance costs, property taxes, and renovation expenses. They remember the price increase, not the true return. People also remember the exceptional markets. They remember Silicon Valley. They remember Miami during the boom. They remember Austin when tech companies moved in. They do not remember the many cities where prices barely kept up with inflation or even declined. Betting on appreciation means betting that your city will outperform history. That is not a guarantee. It is a gamble. Here is something most people do not realize. The 5% rule already assumes reasonable appreciation. The 3% cost of capital includes the idea that your money could have been invested elsewhere. If your home grows at the same rate as other investments, you only break even. Buying only becomes clearly better if your house dramatically outperforms the market. Most homes do not. Now let's talk about the down payment. When you put $100,000 into a house, that money is no longer working in the stock market. If the market returns 8% and your home returns 3%, you lose 5% per year on that money. That is $5,000 every year in missed growth. Over 10 years, it is not just $50,000. It is $50,000 plus the compounding you missed. The real cost is much higher. Your down payment does not disappear, it just slows down. Instead of growing quickly, it grows slowly, and over time that difference becomes massive. Homes feel safe because you can touch them, you can live in them, you can see them, but safety and feeling is not the same as safety and returns. Your house does not protect your wealth, it simply holds it in one place. Buying a home is not really an investment decision. It is a capital allocation decision. You are choosing where your largest pile of money will live. Most people choose housing not because it performs well, but because it feels familiar. The result is that many people tie their future wealth to one of the lowest return assets they will ever own. Not because it is optimal, but because it feels normal. When people think about buying a home, they usually focus on the monthly payment, the mortgage, the interest rate, the down payment. What they do not think about are the exit costs. Selling a home is expensive. In most cases, you pay 5 to 6% of the sale price to real estate agents. You also pay closing costs, transfer taxes, and legal fees. On a $500,000 home, that can easily be $30,000 to $40,000. That money does not build equity. It does not grow your net worth. It simply disappears. Because of these transaction costs, time becomes critical. If you sell your home after only 3 to 5 years, most of your appreciation goes to fees. Your profit becomes very small or even negative. In many cases, you need to stay in the same home for at least 5 to 7 years just to break even. If your life is unpredictable, buying becomes a financial risk. Next, there is maintenance. New homeowners often budget about 1% of the home's value per year for repairs, but real life does not follow averages. Some years cost nothing, then one year costs everything. An air conditioning system can cost $12,000. A new roof can cost $15,000. A water heater can cost $2,000. That is almost $30,000 in a single year. There is no warning. There is no landlord. There is only a large bill. Every part of a house slowly wears out. Pipes corrode, foundations shift, appliances fail, driveways crack. Your home is not just appreciating, it is also aging. Ownership means paying to fight that aging process. Renters do not pay for this directly. Homeowners do. Now let's talk about the down payment again. When you put a large amount of money into a house, that money becomes difficult to access. You cannot easily use it for emergencies, investments, or new opportunities. To access it, you must sell the house, refinance, or borrow against it. All of these options cost money and involve risk. Home equity feels like wealth, but it is illiquid wealth. It looks strong on paper, but it is hard to use in real life. There is also a hidden cost that most people ignore. Flexibility. Jobs change, cities change, relationships change. Houses do not. Owning a home makes it harder to move quickly when life changes. That loss of flexibility has a financial value, even if it does not appear on a spreadsheet. People often say that renting is immature and owning is responsible. But responsibility is not about titles. It is about understanding trade-offs, and most people never see the full cost of ownership. Buying a home does not just cost money. It also costs time, flexibility, and opportunity. Those costs are invisible, but they are real. At this point, it may sound like buying a home is always a bad financial decision. But that is not true. Buying can make sense. It just does not make sense for the reasons most people believe. Buying starts to make sense when rent is high compared to home prices. Specifically, when your annual rent is more than 5% of the home's purchase price. This usually happens in smaller cities, Midwestern markets, and areas where home prices have not been driven up by speculation. In those places, owning can be financially competitive with renting. Not magical, just reasonable. Time also matters. Because selling a home is expensive, you need to stay in one place long enough to spread out the transaction costs. For most people, that means at least 7 to 10 years in the same home. If you might move in 3 or 4 years, buying is usually a financial disadvantage. Hope is not a plan. Time is the plan. Another important factor is investment priority. Before buying a home, it often makes more sense to fully fund tax-advantaged accounts. This includes your 401k, your IRA, and your HSA. These accounts offer both market returns and tax benefits. A home, on the other hand, typically provides only a 1% real return. Choosing a house before maximizing these accounts is usually an inefficient use of money. Some people buy homes for lifestyle reasons. They want stability, they want to customize their space, they want to feel rooted in a community. These are valid reasons, but they are not financial reasons. They are lifestyle choices, and lifestyle choices often come with a premium. There is nothing wrong with paying that premium as long as you're honest about it. The real problem is not buying a home. The real problem is buying automatically. People buy because their parents did, because their friends did, because culture tells them it is the responsible thing to do. That is not strategy. That is tradition. Smart homeownership sounds different. It says, I know this may cost more and I accept that trade-off. Dangerous homeownership says, this will definitely make me rich. Only one of those statements is realistic. Many people build their identity around owning a home. They see it as proof of success and responsibility. But identity does not grow wealth. Compounding does. And compounding works best when your money is placed where it can grow efficiently. Buying a home can be emotionally rewarding. It can improve your quality of life. It can make you feel stable. But it is not automatically a wealth-building tool. That story was created by marketing, not by math. The real question is not, should I buy? The real question is, what am I paying for? Because once you understand the price, you control the decision. If you want to make a smart decision about renting versus buying, you need a clear process. Not opinions, not pressure, not stories, just numbers. First, find the type of home you would realistically buy in your market. Not a dream home. Not a fantasy upgrade. A home that fits your income, savings, and lifestyle. Next, take the price of that home and calculate 5% of it. Then divide that number by 12. That gives you the true monthly cost of owning the home. Not the mortgage payment, not the emotional value, the real cost. Now compare that number to what it would cost to rent a similar home in the same area. If rent is cheaper, renting is the financially better option. You are not wasting money. You are choosing flexibility. After that, ask yourself an honest question. Are you confident you will stay in that home for at least 7 to 10 years? Not hopeful, not optimistic. Confident. Life changes quickly, and short timelines make buying expensive. Then calculate the alternative. What would your net worth look like if you rented and invested the difference instead? Compare that to the home equity you would build. One is liquid and flexible, the other is locked in a property. Most people never run this comparison. They just follow tradition. You are not a renter waiting to become an owner, and you are not an owner who has made it. You are someone deciding where your money should live. Money does not care about identity. Money cares about outcomes. Real estate agents do not teach this. Mortgage lenders do not promote this, and homeowners rarely admit it, because the truth is not profitable. Stories sell better than spreadsheets. Jason thought he was building wealth. In reality, he was delaying it. Not because he was careless, but because he followed a story that culture wrote for him. Not the math. Renting is not a failure. It is a financial strategy. One that keeps your money flexible in a world that changes fast. Liquid money can move. It can adapt. It can grow. A house stays in one place. And in a fast-moving economy, stillness has a cost. You are not throwing money away. You are choosing how to spend it. One choice feels traditional. The other feels flexible. Only one consistently compounds. The final question is not, what will people think? The final question is, what will my future self thank me for? Because the only opinion that compounds is your own. Every home has a price. Not just in dollars, but in freedom, opportunity, time, and growth. Read the full receipt, then choose.